The Gulf Injustice Podcast, the official podcast of Detained in Dubai with Radha Stirling.
Today, though, just now, and a story we've been reporting in our news bulletins throughout the morning. He spent the best part of 2 months in jail in Baghdad, threatened with extradition to Qatar over an unpaid debt. But this morning, 43-year-old Brian Glendinning is making plans to return to Scotland. His family have been campaigning relentlessly to have him released. We can speak now to his brother, John. Morning to you, John.
Morning, how are you doing?
Good, thanks very much. Thanks for being with us this morning. So just start, if you would, John, by taking us through Brian's story. How did all of this come about? How did he find himself in this situation?
Brian left Scotland on Sunday, the 11th of September, and travelled to Iraq for his new job. On his travel, he passed through Dubai, and when he arrived in Iraq, he was detained by Iraq Interpol. He was then told the reason was for an unpaid loan that was taken out when he worked in Qatar in 2016. Brian took a loan in 2016 whilst in Qatar. He was paying back the loan very high payments, instalments. His thought process was take a loan, I'm earning enough money to pay it back quickly. He believes he got the loan down to around about £5,500 left on the loan, and unfortunately fell unwell. And over a period of a few months, he'd been unwell, lost his job in Qatar. So he was unable to return, had left a lot of personal belongings behind. Early 2017, got a new job up in Aberdeen and tried to contact the Qatari National Bank on a few occasions where they were non-responsive. And we now realised why, because they'd already sentenced my brother to 2 years in jail in his absence and didn't tell him.
And had they been at him for, demanding to get the money back in between times? Had he heard from them?
No.
So the first he knew was his arrest?
The first he knew was his arrest. That was the very first time he had knew anything. I mean, they said he was on the red list for Interpol. I'm not a professional in Interpol, but my thought process on that would be when you're placed on the red list by a country, that would mean you're on the red list for every Interpol in every single country in the world. And that is not the case on this, because I actually travelled to Spain earlier this year with my brother. He took his own family to Turkey this year on holiday. No problems at all. Again, I'll tell you, he passed through Dubai. No problems at all. So it looks like there's certain Interpols that will take, shall we say, a brown envelope from certain countries in the Gulf state in order to be there collector for them.
We don't know the circumstances of that. We do know that he was arrested when he arrived in Iraq, and what you said, September. He's been in jail in Iraq since then. What have the conditions been like?
The conditions have been vile. Brian was held in a holding cell that was up to, I think in the end they said 44 people. This was a mixture of terrorists, drug dealers, people who had murdered their own father and openly speaking about using a shotgun on their own father. And there's Brian Glendinning, never missed a day of school. And arguably, if anything, a civil case, and he's held in these conditions where we as a family had to pay for all his welfare. We had to send money across the Western Union. The welfare was still extremely low. Bottles of water were kept where you've seen rats crawling over the water all the time, brown water out the taps for the shower. The food was very, very poor. And were you able to speak to him at all during all of this? I mean, could you tell how he was holding up? We were lucky enough on a few occasions to get phone calls. Brian was entitled to one phone call a week, but because we managed on occasions to get money to him, he could then use that money to use another phone in order to make phone calls to his wife, myself and his mum and dad. And it was as much as it was good to get a phone call to hear Brian's voice and speak with him, but to hear his pain and what he was in, and he's terrified because the whole time he still believes he was getting extradited to Qatar, where he would have been sentenced. Well, he's already sentenced, when he'd have to serve 2 years.
Sure. I mean, the good news is that this all seems to be over now. Where is he now? When did you last speak to him? When's he going to be home?
Brian's in a secure hotel. The British Embassy picked up Brian instantly, took him to a secure hotel, and as we speak, they're trying to sort out his exit visa. I believe that's the correct terminology. So until he's in Scottish soil, it's not over, and unfortunately, it won't be over for quite a long time, I think, because this is going to have a massive, huge impact on my brother's mental health. We're already 9 weeks in there, so job-wise, how long is this going to go on for? This could be up to 3 months without employment. So it's having a huge impact financially on his family, and then his mental health is something we're going to be really concerned about.
Sure. And I mean, given that, how are you going to welcome him home? When do you expect to see him, and how are you going to mark his return?
Definitely going to be at an airport once we decide what path we're going to take. There's different routes you can fly leaving Iraq, so our preference is to fly to a non-Gulf state, so most likely the Istanbul route. And yeah, I'll be there along with other members of the family, obviously, to greet Brian. It's been a long time coming. It's something that I've dreamt about personally. To receive that phone call yesterday and see my brother's name come up on my phone, it's really hard to put into words how that felt, because I've been dreaming of that.
Yeah, and I guess, you might feel like throwing a party, but it might be something more gentle for him when he gets back, given, as you say, what he's been through, right?
Of course, we want to celebrate. We'd love to celebrate and have people celebrate with us who have made this happen. The community, the village, the people out with its businesses that supported us, and Radha Stirling, who, without Radha Stirling, this conversation would be happening today, that's for sure. Anybody knows anybody in a similar situation, my brother, then I advise you to contact Radha Stirling.
All right. Well, listen, John, all the best to you. Thanks for being with us, and good luck with the reunion to you and your family. It's John Glendinning there, Brian Glendinning's brother.
Thank you so much for all your messages this morning.
Thank you for listening to the Gulf Injustice podcast.